Hello everyone and welcome to this video. I'm very pleased as ARPA's Director of Law and Public Policy to be able to introduce to you Member of Parliament Garnett Genuis, who's joined us in the ARPA offices to discuss the issue of conversion therapy bans, in particular Bill C-8. Bill C-8 was introduced in March, I believe, of this year, and it proposes to ban in the criminal code to create a ban against all conversion therapy. Which, on its face doesn't necessarily concern us, because there are certain practices out there that have long been discredited, certain practices out there that have been harmful to people. And so on its face, as we're a Christian organization, as a Christian, I'd say, okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But as with a lot of things, the devil is in the details. So with us is a legislator, a man who has to debate these kinds of issues in the House of Commons. And we're going to ask him for his opinions on Bill C-8, any problems that he sees in there, and what some solutions to those problems might be. So maybe, Garnett, let's start with the definition itself. So I've got Bill C-8 right here in front of us, and we'll also put the definition right up on the screen there so you can read along, the viewer can read along. But Section 320 of the Criminal Code is proposed to be changed to say, conversion therapy means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change a person's sexual orientation to heterosexual or gender identity to cisgender, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. So what are your thoughts on a definition like that?
Well, let's take a step back first from the legislative definition and talk about what the definition of conversion therapy as most people understand it. Because when I start talking with people about this issue, for many people, certainly people outside of the LGBTQ community, their first response is, what is this? I've never heard of this before, right? Yeah. So there's these series of practices, widely discredited. They never, as far as I know, really were mainstream, but that they usually involve sort of violence, degrading treatment, trying to make somebody who had attractions, people of the same sex, to make them not have those attractions, to take somebody who was gay and make them straight. In particular, what came to be called conversion therapy was usually violent, degrading. It used things like electric shock therapy, a lot of shame. And I've gone online and watched some of the testimonials of people who have been through things like conversion therapy, and it is genuinely horrific. Right. People of faith, Christians in particular, I think, should be strongly opposed to conversion therapy because of the way in which it is degrading and contrary to human dignity, and uses shame and pain as a way of bringing about something, or trying to bring about something. So not only is conversion therapy contrary to the values of our secular society, it's also deeply contrary to the spirit of the gospel. And because of that, conversion therapy does not happen in churches in Canada. It doesn't happen, as far as I know, in any faith or other community that I've been connected to or a part of. So on that basis, great, let's ban it. I mean, maybe it's not happening, or it's not happening very much in Canada, but for extra certainty, absolutely. The definition used in this legislation is, I think, something quite different from that historic understanding of what conversion therapy was. It says any practice which, especially even seeks to reduce sexual attraction or behavior. That is so broad, right? That if a parent says to their 16-year-old, we don't think you should be sexually active right now, whether in a homosexual or heterosexual way, we don't think you should be sexually active either until you're married or until you're older, whatever the sort of values of that family are. Is that an effort to reduce sexual attraction or behavior? Potentially, yes. Right. The government said when this legislation was put forward that it was aimed at that it didn't include private conversations, and but none of the communications they used around kind of the narrowing of it are actually contained within the legislation. Okay. So I think there's a lot of potential for consensus on this issue. Actually, it's just provided that the government is prepared to amend and fix the problems with the definition. I think all politicians would hopefully like to get to a yes. We would like to have a bill that bans conversion therapy as it's been historically understood, and then see that bill have unanimous support in the House, be able to pass quickly. But with the legislation as it's written right now, there are some real concerns about how that would apply to parenting situations, literally where a parent is saying, we don't think you should be sexually active right now or in that situation, or a church which is teaching young people about sexual abstinence or about the teachings of their church. In a free society, those conversations should be allowed to happen.
Right. Yep.
So these are some of the issues that the definition raises.
Okay. So you've been involved in a small campaign called fixthedefinition.ca. It's a website where people can go to sign a petition in order to advocate for changing the definition, fixing the definition. So what would be some things that you would advocate for changing in the definition? Like, how do we tighten it up? How do we get away from potentially targeting parents or religious counselors and actually get at the bad stuff that you started with?
Yeah, well, and it's been very important for us to be particular and intentional around our communications around this. We don't want this to become a political wedge where some people are saying you're for a conversion therapy ban or against it, right? Everybody wants to ban conversion therapy as it's been historically understood. We want to fix the definition. And in that spirit, we want to be constructive. We want to put forward proposals to address some of the problematic language in this legislation. And I think part of that should involve consultation with legal experts, with different communities about how we can ensure the definition zeroes in on actual conversion therapy. It shouldn't be that difficult to do, though, right? I mean, we've heard these testimonials. Those who are less aware of this, you can go on YouTube and look up people talking about their own experience of conversion therapy. And I think most of your viewers will say, okay, that's bad. I don't want to see that happen. How do we make sure that doesn't happen?
Right.
And clearly defining a situation where somebody is in a sort of pseudoscientific context being forced through degrading treatment to go through a procedure which is aimed at changing their sexual orientation. We can identify that specific thing and ban it, and it shouldn't be difficult to do that legislatively as long as there are genuine good intentions to achieve that objective on all sides. So those that want to find out more and also want to add their name to this effort can go to fixthedefinition.ca, can sign our petition, and we've already tabled a paper petition in the House of Commons on this issue, so we'll see what the government's response to that is, but we're going to continue to build momentum for this. Expectation was that this bill would have been debated this spring, but with the situation with COVID-19, it's now a little bit more up in the air. The bill has been proposed but not actually debated. So hopefully the government is listening, hopefully the government is hearing the concerns that are being raised and the constructive suggestions about fixing the definition so that we can then advance the bill quickly and ensure that that something like it at least becomes law before the end of this Parliament.
Okay. So what's at stake? Like, let's say we can't get the definition fixed, and it's debated this fall, and it passes. Like what are the criminal penalties? What's at stake for general society if we don't fix the definition?
Well, I think we enter into a space of a lot of legal ambiguity, but also a potential chilling effect, because the definition as written includes any practice, any communications that seeks to reduce sexual attraction or behavior. You could imagine a church hosting a youth retreat in which they speak about their faith teaching on issues of sexuality, and that leading to legal complaints under this legislation. You can imagine a situation where a parent is imposing certain kind of house rules around sexual behavior in relationships,
Right.
saying you can't have sleepovers with your boyfriend or girlfriend, these sorts of things, and then that becoming the subject of a legal complaint. We can hope that police, prosecutors would be reasonable in their application of this, but that's never a guarantee, and the law should seek to be clear, because when the law is not clear, there can be a chilling effect that maybe parents are reluctant to give guidance to their children. Maybe counselors become reluctant to see people who are exploring questions of their sexual identity. Not because those counselors would want to try to sort of degrade them or push them in one direction, but just because the person seeking counseling might want the support of that counselor to explore and evaluate aspects of what they're feeling and what's going on in their life. And so there may be a chill, there may be a reluctance to even engage in these conversations for fear of running afoul of a very ambiguous law. In the extreme case, there are serious prison penalties involved, and those penalties are appropriate if we're talking about a case in which people are subject to bullying, violence, degrading treatment. But if people are potentially liable for long prison terms for private conversations where they're expressing their views or giving their advice about issues around sexual behavior, sexual practices, I think in a free society there's space for those kind of private conversations. What police and prosecutors will do with a very ambiguous law, who knows? But the ambiguity will then be there in the criminal code, which creates a lot of vulnerability and uncertainty.
So the definition as well, it focuses on one directional change. So it specifically targets, at least in Bill C8. So we've seen variations of this bill passed at provincial and municipal levels as well. Here in C8, obviously the focus is on criminal law, and the definition talks about forcing change for sexual orientation from homosexual to heterosexual, or forcing change from away from towards cisgender, right? So reducing a transgender identity. So what do we make of that one direction and that not going the other way? Like, should we be concerned, for example, of some people who have regretted their gender transition, who want to transition back? Does this bill create any roadblocks for people who are looking to transition back? What does it do for the general LGBTQ community? Is it actually helping, or is there actually a harm, an unintentional probably harm for them?
Yeah, I suppose the rationale between defining it in that direction would be there isn't really a history of conversion therapy the other way, right? There isn't really a history of people, in the early 20th century going to counselors and being subject to shame and violent treatment as a way of trying to remove their heterosexual feelings of attraction. So I guess maybe that's the explanation for the way that's structured. But I mean, I just come back to the point. Why not have a definition that clearly zeroes in on the things that we all agree are the problem, which are the violence, the bullying, the degrading treatment, the cases where people are forced against their will, or just subject to aggression and violence, even that they might have initially entered the course of treatment voluntarily, but then be subject to treatment that is just contrary to their human dignity. The definition should be and could be so clearly focused on those things, and be clear about not including private conversations among friends. I mean, this is what we should be seeking to do is actually deal with the practice and address it in a concrete way. I mean, in terms of the case of people that have had a gender transition and then say they regret it, I don't have a lot of expertise in this area, but I also think within the parameters of a free society, adults voluntarily exploring questions of their identity, and doing so with those who love and support them and want the best for them. I think we should be very careful putting constraints on their ability to seek out conversations about aspects of their identity, and there are perhaps legitimate parameters on that, but those parameters should be fairly wide to give free people the space to think about these things themselves and come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so again, looking at the bill, I did a little bit of criminal law, so I'm familiar with how to interpret the criminal code. And when I look at it again, obviously most of what the problem is with the definition. But again, if we don't fix the definition, then the things that are criminal are forced conversion therapy. Again, if we're targeting these harmful practices that you've outlined, no problem. I'm okay with banning forced conversion therapy. That's no problem. In fact, even so, like the type of therapy or talk therapy, open-ended conversations, house rules about sexual behavior and so on, I mean, that's not forced to begin with, and it's not conversion therapy. Another criminal offense here is causing children to undergo conversion therapy. Both of those face a maximum fine or a jail term of 5 years in jail for that. Advertising conversion therapy, that's very problematic, facing a potential for 2 years in prison for that. So again, you talked about how making sure people know what their options are out there. Like if a social worker, for example, says, look, I'm a social worker who has some expertise in gender dysphoria, for example, and I'm there to talk through those issues, talk through your history, your upbringing, and so on. Would that be covered by a criminal ban on advertising conversion therapy? Big questions there. Material benefit from conversion therapy, again, facing a maximum of 2 years in prison. If you make money doing so-called conversion therapy, again, depending on how you define it. And then as well, the fifth thing that was criminal or is criminal within Bill C-8 is taking a child out of Canada in order to receive it elsewhere, so presumably in the United States. So big, broad bill as it relates to the issue of conversion therapy. I'm gonna play a clip for you and for our viewers. It's a press conference that was was done when this bill was announced on March 9th, and it features the Justice Minister, David Lametti. And he's answering, so he gave a spiel and then he took questions from the media. And so he's answering a question. One reporter's asked him, does this bill drive a wedge between parents and their children? And so this is his response.
Je vais le citer en anglais, mais il dit it shouldn't create a wedge between parents and their children. Qu'est-ce que vous lui répondez?
This does not create a wedge between parents and their children. This, in fact, again, open-ended discussions between parents and their children are critical for children who are exploring their sexuality or their identity or their gender expression. Those are absolutely critical, and they're not touched by this legislation. What is touched by this legislation are practices that try to change to a defined result.
So you just heard what the Justice Minister had to say there. It says not touched, open-ended conversations with parents are not touched by this legislation. What do you think of what he said there?
Well, I think if you look at the government's communications around this bill in general, they've said a lot of things that aren't in the bill. If you go to the Justice website, there's a whole paragraph about it doesn't include this and it doesn't include that. I think reasonable people would agree that we don't want to police the kinds of conversations that parents have with their children. Right. Frankly, in a situation where a parent is confronted with new information about their child's sexual identity, they might say the wrong thing.
Sure.
They might say something that they regret saying later. Yeah. And they might need to resolve that issue with their child later. But they shouldn't go to jail. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be a criminal complaint because they said the wrong thing. Right. That's something to be worked out at the level of human relationships. Mm-hmm. And virtually all parents, they want the best for their kids. They love their kids. They care about their kids. They want the best for their kids. And even if situations or things that maybe they didn't expect, maybe they, from whatever their own personal context, are not used to dealing with, they want the best for their kids. And so you talked about the particulars of the bill. There's a lot of different things in the bill. It's not that long by the standard of our legislation, but there's a number of different things in it. But it all comes back to the definition. Yeah. everything's fine in the bill as long as we define conversion therapy correctly. As long as we're talking about a pseudoscientific practice that has the trappings of what conversion therapy has had. Most people, when they think of conversion therapy, again, they're thinking of this kind of pseudoscience quackery where someone puts out a shingle saying, "Come here, and for $1,000, we're gonna do this," and that's just very different from the situation where parents and children, mentors, a few friends are talking and they're expressing different opinions about their own experiences and their own beliefs. So let's fix the definition. I mean, I would like to be able to work with the government and work with other parties to get to a version of this bill which everybody, which the LGBTQ community, the Christian community, conservatives, liberals, New Democrats, Bloc, everybody can say, we've effectively addressed something that we can all agree is a problem. Unfortunately, I mean, we live in a world where often people want to use political wedges, and it becomes politically useful to be able to say, well, this person's taking this extreme position, or they're supportive of conversion therapy, whatever it is, and therefore to dismiss them when this isn't an issue where there should be a wedge. We should be able to work together collaboratively, and if we don't, then we're going to end up with a bill with some problems in it that has some what probably are unintended consequences, but that limit people's ability to have conversations among themselves without fear of law enforcement intervening.
Right. So so you're part of the Conservative Caucus, the Conservative Party of Canada. If this bill were passed without the definition fixed, would you be willing to advocate to fix it should you get a government mandate in the future?
Well, this will be a free vote within our caucus, very, very clearly. There would probably be a consensus within our caucus that there's a drafting problem with the definition. Right. And some people would say, based on that, I'm going to vote against it. And others would say, based on that, I still want to signal my support for the principle of banning conversion therapy. So although you'll likely see some variation in terms of votes, there is substantive agreement that conversion therapy in principle is a bad thing and should be stopped, and B, there are some problems with the drafting of the definition. So I would hope that a Conservative government would seek to ensure that conversion therapy is properly defined and banned. Right. What we actually do in government, we'll see. What the inclinations of the new leader are along those lines as well. But I would hope again that a Conservative Party in government would take the position conversion therapy should be properly defined and banned.
Right. So last question then, what can our viewers do about this? We don't sit in the House of Commons like you do. We don't get a vote. What should we do?
Well, go to fixthedefinition.ca, sign the petition. And by signing the petition, you'll enable yourself to continue to receive some more direct information. And we'll keep people informed through that contact list of kind of key events as they come up, when the legislation is actually brought to a debate, brought to a vote in the House of Commons. But there's no reason not to contact your MP right now as well, to reach out to your local MP wherever you are and tell them that you have some concerns about the way this legislation is drafted, and you want them to work on fixing the definition and trying to build a consensus in Parliament around doing something that everyone should agree on, which is properly defining the terms and then moving forward. So contact your MP, but also do sign the petition on the website fixthedefinition.ca, because that really allows us to build momentum and keep in touch with people. And if you use social media, share the website with others. Fixthedefinition.ca, post it on your Facebook, your Twitter, so other people are aware of it as well.
Yeah. And of course, ARPA Canada has resources on the issue as well. Our policy report, our respectfully submitted policy report, was on conversion therapy last fall. So check that out on our website at arpacanada.ca/publications. And of course, there's our Easy Mail program where you can very easily contact your MP, your Member of Parliament, on this issue, encouraging them to fix the definition. We have an Easy Mail on this subject, so definitely check that one out as well. Thanks so much, Member of Parliament Garnett Genuis, for joining us here today for this video. We really appreciate you advocating on this issue. I know it's a very sensitive one out there right now. People's words can be twisted and misunderstood. So the fact that you're taking a principled stand on this, advocating in a winsome way for something that would be for the benefit of all Canadians, we really, really appreciate it. So thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you. My pleasure. And people can try and twist our words, but anytime I've had this conversation with anyone, wherever they are on the spectrum, we usually come out of it agreeing. And that's not true for every issue, right? But people, wherever they come from on this issue, the message of trying to fix the definition so that there's no ambiguity, there's clarity. I think it's a uniting message as long as people understand that is the goal and are interested in working together towards it.
Well, that's very encouraging. That's awesome. So thanks so much.
Thank you.